Esta semana nos ofrece uno de los conjuntos de santos más ricos que hemos considerado hasta ahora en esta serie, pero necesito empezar con un comentario de hoy, que es el aniversario de la recientemente y gracias a Dios revocada decisión del Supreme Court Roe contra Wade, que supuso la aprobación a nivel federal del asesinato masivo de bebés no nacidos. Mientras estaba revocada, el hecho es que muchos estados de esos Estados Unidos promulgaron leyes horribles que establecen el acto de sacrificio de niños como intocable. El aborto, y no sé por qué necesito repetir a católicos, pero a veces es necesario, el aborto directo es pura y simplemente el asesinato de una vida inocente. Como hemos mencionado antes, es también adoración satánica que quiere que sacrificamos nuestros niños y bebés a Él. También hace horrible daño a las mamás y papás de los bebés, psicológicamente y físicamente, y es la razón por que nuestra nación y mayor parte del mundo está bajo la influencia del diablo, porque nos hemos esclavizado a él a través de esta maldad. Hoy normalmente es el día de oración por la protección legal de los niños no nacidos, según los obispos de los Estados Unidos, porque el domingo vamos a celebrar mañana. Con esta oración necesitamos ayunar y ofrecer otros sacrificios que añaden poder a nuestras oraciones y no rezar solamente para por la protección legal, también que el aborto sea prohibido, que todos los apoyen al aborto se conviertan y todos los que han sido heridos por el aborto reciban la misericordia y la curación de Dios. Y para ustedes, si tú has tenido un aborto, sepa que Dios es misericordioso y que no tienes que llevar esta carga sola. Habla conmigo y podemos poner en contacto con personas que pueden ayudar con eso. So before I speak about the saints of this week, I want to make a comment about today, particularly, is annually the day of legal protection for the unborn. Because it's Sunday, it's transferred to Monday, but it's the anniversary is today, and it's today because of the anniversary of the recently revoked, thanks be to God, decision of Roe v. Wade, which from the U.S. Supreme Court, which made abortion legal in the United States. Thankfully, that is not the case at the federal level anymore, but there are many states that have enshrined this horror in their laws and made it untouchable since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Abortion is simply and unquestionably the murder of an unborn child, of an innocent life. It is satanic worship because the devil is always trying to get us to murder babies in his honor, and it does horrible damage to the parents, the mother particularly, but both parents. This is not something without consequences, no matter what the media and schools and your friends and everything else you hear say. It does horrible damage to everyone involved. And it is why this country and most of the world is under the direct influence of the devil, because we have enslaved ourselves to him through it. Today is annually the day of prayer for the legal protection of the unborn. We again celebrate that tomorrow because today is Sunday. But I want to make two comments on that before I move on. One is that in addition to prayer, we need to sacrifice, something we don't talk enough about as Catholics. There is power in fasting and in giving up things, whether it's food or other comforts, that we are missing, and we are lacking much power in the church and in our lives because we do not know how to sacrifice. The second thing I would add is not just for the legal protection that we should be praying for, but we should also be praying for the conversion of all those involved, because we want them to be saved as well. and to particularly pray for the healing of anyone who has been involved in abortion. If you have been involved, you must know that God is merciful if you repent, and that if you need help and you need healing, then please come see us and we will put you in contact with the right people. But do not suffer any longer. If you have been involved in this evil, please try and find help, and we can provide it. Because of the length of this sermon, I'm not going to really give you a summary of a lot of these saints, because I'm going to talk about them again a little bit later. But we are celebrating this week things like the espousals of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and in particular, the three saints that I'm going to talk about are St. Francis de Sales, St. Thomas Aquinas, and St. Paul, whose conversion we celebrate this week. Tenemos muchos santos de esta semana. El 23 se conmemoran los dos desposorios de la Santísima Virgen a San José, y el 24 es San Francisco de Sales. Aunque su obra más famosa, y con razón, es la introducción a la vida devota, de lectura obligada para los principiantes. Tenemos muchas otras suyas. Por ejemplo, la siguiente que voy a leer pertenece a Rosas entre Espinas, una antología de consejos espirituales encontrados en diversas cartas que él escribió. Él escribió: todas las estaciones de la vida confluyen en el alma. Queremos que siempre sea primavera y verano, pero tiene que haber vicisitudes de la vida interior tanto como la exterior. Solo en el cielo todo será primavera en su belleza, otoño en su fecundidad y verano en su ardor. Allí no habrá invierno, pero aquí el invierno es necesario para la obra de abnegación y para las 1000 virtudes menores pero hermosas que ejercitamos en el tiempo de barbecho. Sigamos pues poniendo un pie delante del otro. Siempre que nuestro corazón sea verdadero, caminaremos rectamente. Vamos a celebrar también la conversión del apóstol San Pablo, cuya historia ya saben bien, ojalá, y sus discípulos Timoteo y Tito el día siguiente. La fiesta moderna de Santo Tomás de Aquino es el 28. Él es una de las mentes más grandes que Dios ha dado a su iglesia. Él era muy santo y muy inteligente y dedicó la mayor parte de su tiempo a la oración, el estudio y la enseñanza. Si no sabes nada más que Santo Tomás, conoce su gran devoción al Santísimo Sacramento. ¿Por qué, Padre? ¿Cómo sabemos? Porque por orden del Papa Urbano XIV cumplió el oficio del Santísimo Sacramento, y conocen los himnos y la oración colecta porque está en la adoración del Santísimo, tanto mergo y os salutares. Es famoso por muchos más escritos, especialmente de su Summa Theologiae y la Summa contra Gentiles. What I'd like to focus on today, based off of the reading that I've done this week, is something that I was reminded of when I was reading the lives of the saints. And that is from Solomon's Proverbs, when he says, "Raise up a child in the ways of the Lord when he is young, and when he is older he will not easily go astray." And I say that because of what I have seen in the lives of these saints. For example, Saint Saul, that is the future Saint Paul, was educated very well. He was a devout Jew, a Pharisee, which included all of the human, religious, and intellectual formation that it entailed. Father Butler observes the fact that the Jews had a rule that children had to learn some practical trade while they were studying. And he attributes that to a number of things, but mainly to form their minds, their bodies, and to avoid idleness. So it was something that St. Paul would have learned, because as we know from the scriptures, he was a tent maker. We want to avoid the idea, and here I'm speaking mainly to the children, although some of you parents are understanding me great. Childhood is not a time to just play and have fun. Childhood is a time to become an adult, to get ready to become an adult. And while we enjoy our playtime and we enjoy our fun activities, real men and women, which you are growing to be, do not spend all their time doing that. And even if some people who are grown do spend most of their time playing, that means they're not really being adults. Play is recreation, that's good, but that's not what you were created for. You will rest in heaven. Now it is time to grow, now it is time to work, now it is time to develop. We learned that from St. Paul. Bueno, mientras leí las vidas de los santos esta semana, me acordé las palabras de Salomón en Proverbios, donde él dice, instruye a los niños en el buen camino y cuando sean viejos no se desviarán. Varios de los santos que celebramos esta semana son grandes ejemplos de los frutos de una formación adecuada. Por ejemplo, San Pablo, él fue educado como un judío devoto, como un fariseo, con toda la formación religiosa, humana e intelectual que ello conllevaba. Por ejemplo, el padre Butler señala que era norma entre los judíos que todos sus hijos aprendieran algún oficio junto con sus estudios, si no era para evitar la ociosidad y para ejercitar el cuerpo, además de la mente, en algo serio. Y mi comentario es muy importante, que los niños aprendan a trabajar desde la más tierna edad y que se no limiten a ser tratados como animales domésticos, es decir, alimentados, regados, adiestrados para ir al baño y luego impedidos de hacer un gran daño, hasta que tengan edad suficiente para ganar dinero. Hay que formarlos en todos los sentidos. Sabemos que el propio San Pablo era fabricante de tiendas. Another very good example this week for us is St. Francis de Sales. His mother was very solicitous to make sure that he was not exposed to vice. Now, we can't lock children up in a closet until they're 18, as much as we might want to sometimes. But we also want to be careful that they're well guarded. But she taught him a respect for holy things. She read to him the lives of the saints and took her with him when it was time to give alms to the poor. Might consider including maybe some of our school children in St. Teresa's Apostolate. That would be a good idea along those lines. He was sent to school, of course. He continued to pray and study the lives of the saints, but he also learned philosophy, rhetoric, Greek and Hebrew. I know some of you still have trouble with English, but Greek and Hebrew, and how to ride horses, to dance, properly and purely, of course, and to fence. And by that I mean swords, not putting up fences, although that is a good skill that we should teach our young people. Like St. Thomas Aquinas, he studied as much, if not more, at the foot of the cross as he did with books. Ahora, también tenemos en Francisco de Sales, podemos ver este punto con más detalle. Su madre fue extremadamente solícita para que él no se manchara con ningún vicio. Le inculcó un gran respeto a las cosas santas, le leía la vida de los santos y le llevaba con ella a ayudar a repartir limosna a los pobres. Es posiblemente buena idea que nuestros niños en la escuela participan en el apostolado de St. Teresa, por ejemplo, de esto. Fue enviado, y como Santo Tomás de Aquino, estudiaba tanto al pie del crucifijo como en los libros. And finally, we see in St. Thomas of Aquinas a particular emphasis on intellectual formation. His father took him when he was 5 years old to the monastery of Monte Cassino, where he began his education. When he was 10 years old, the abbot told his father it was time to send him to the university. And when he's speaking about religious orders, St. Thomas will later write that it is perfectly acceptable for a religious order to dedicate itself to study because it illuminates the mind, it helps understanding the truths of religion, it avoids idleness and sloth, and of course prepares the teacher, the preacher, and the writer for their task. But what I'd like to speak about is the fact that many students ask me, why do we need to study? Why do I have to do this? Right? I'm sure the parents get that all the time as well. I want to talk about that for a minute in just a moment. Y finalmente, con Santo Tomás de Aquino, como muchos santos, fue bien formado en su infancia, pero particularmente en su intelecto. Por ejemplo, su padre lo condujo a la abadía de Monte Cassino cuando él tenía no más que 5 años para empezar su educación. No tenía más que 10 años cuando el abad dijo a su padre que era tiempo de enviarlo a alguna universidad. No estoy diciendo esto porque quiero que nuestros niños de 10 años de edad estén preparados para la universidad. Estoy compartiendo esto porque no damos suficiente a nuestros hijos. Su capacidad es mucho más grande que ofrecemos a ellos. Mucho más grande. Ellos pueden aprender mucho si tienen la disciplina, y ustedes tienen la disciplina de asegurar que están bien formados. Al hablar de órdenes religiosas, Santo Tomás también dice que hay muchas razones por qué un orden religioso puede enfocarse en la formación intelectual. Por el que ilumina la mente, ayuda a la comprensión de las verdades de la religión, aleja la ociosidad y prepara el maestro, predicador y escritor en su tarea. Now, many students ask me again, why do we have to do this schoolwork? I know that many students in our schools are simply advanced without knowing what they need to know. And why do I know that? Well, because I spend time with them. Because many of them are in our home school, and they are having to catch up because they were simply passed along. So that they can, for the numbers, I guess. One of the reasons why this point is so important is because particularly many men feel that they can earn a living with their 2 hands. Why do I need an education? I know enough what I need to do. I can make money. And not only do they not support their wives and their children in the education of the children, some of them actively work against it, which is absolutely horrible. But my words to them is, all right, fine. The minute you have an accident or you get sick, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to do what a lot of people do. They're going to go crazy. Because a lot of men happen at retirement because they don't have something that they know how to do, or because they can't physically do it anymore. That's why we need to form up here. We have to form ourselves intellectually and spiritually, and not just in doing things. Most people will come to a point where they're going to need that formation. You can run for it most of your life, but at some point, because of sickness, old age, whatever it is, retirement, you're going to get to the point where you're going to need more than just the doing. And man is more than that. Human beings, I mean. Man is more than that. There are 2 distinctions I want to make, though, about education before I say more. The first is that intellectual formation, the formation of our minds, is not the same thing as academic performance. Just because you get good grades does not mean that you are intelligent or that you are doing well. And just because you don't get good grades does not mean that you are dumb. Some people come to me, some children I hear in confession, they say one of their sins is they got bad grades. No, hold on a second. Did you get bad grades because you weren't taught well, because you didn't understand, or did you get bad grades because you were lazy? If it's the first, it's not your fault. If you were lazy, that's the sin, not getting the bad grades. Grades are not the most important thing. doing your best because that is your God-given duty. That's what's important. Being caught up to the third quarter where you're supposed to be is important. I'm speaking to the homeschoolers at this point, some of them who are a little bit behind this year. That's what's important. The other distinction that's very important is university is not essential. A college education is not essential. It's good sometimes, but it is not essential, and there are many reasons to be very wary of that. Universities are businesses. They want you and they want your money. Not only are they just treating you that way, but also many of them violently impose diabolical ideologies on the students, and they use grades and financial aid and pressure from the professors to keep you in line. So I want you to be very careful of that. A corollary of this is that it's not, for those who do go to college, because there is value in it, you don't have to go immediately out of high school. Sometimes it's good to take a break. Sometimes you need to grow a little bit before you're out on your own like that. And you also don't have to necessarily finish it in 4 years. Take your time. Don't drive yourself insane. Don't put yourself in ridiculous debt, etc., simply to meet some artificial standard. Ahora, ¿por qué es necesario estudiar? Hay muchas razones, pero la razón por este comentario es que necesitamos formar nuestras mentes, y debido a que muchos hombres encuentran empleo sin tener una educación adecuada, no fomentan una educación adecuada en sus hijos, o peor, niegan a sus hijos una educación. Algunos hombres de esta parroquia, yo sé, están en esta posición. Caballeros, un día a causa de enfermedad, un accidente o vejez, no tendrán la capacidad de trabajar. ¿Y qué van a hacer en este momento? Si toda su vida es en sus manos, ¿qué van a hacer? Bueno, tomar demasiado probablemente, regañar a su esposa demasiado. Hay otras cosas así, muchos vicios. Okay? La formación intelectual es muy importante para los trabajadores también, no solamente para los padres, okay? Para los que trabajan en oficinas. Es esencial que haga dos distinciones, pero la primera es la formación intelectual no es lo mismo que el éxito académico. Buenas notas dependen de la capacidad de los niños, la escuela y muchas otras cosas. Tener buenas notas no significa que su hijo es inteligente, y pobres notas no significa que no es inteligente. Es más complicado que esto. Y cuidado con regañar a sus hijos por eso. Ahora, si es una falta de disciplina, utiliza la charla, ¿right? Pero con sabiduría, por favor, discierne la situación y no utilicen solamente notas para decidir cómo trabajan sus niños. La segunda es la educación universitaria no es necesaria ni útil para muchas personas. Es útil y necesaria para algunos, pero no todos. Eso es una mentira de nuestras escuelas. Esas universidades son empresas y existen para dinero más que educación a veces. Y muchas de ellas imponen violentamente sus propias ideologías diabólicas a los estudiantes, utilizando notas y finanzas y así para hacer que sigan que dicen. Un corolario de esto es que tampoco es siempre necesario inmediatamente después de la secundaria. A veces los niños necesitan tiempo, pueden trabajar un poco, crecer en la madurez un poco así. No es necesario inmediatamente después de high school. Y también no es necesario en 4 años. No hay prisa. porque si tratamos de hacer demasiado rápidamente, es cuando nuestros estudiantes tenían muchos problemas emocionales. Okay, so with all that aside, let's be very clear. Why is it necessary to study? There's a lot of very important reasons. One is that we were made in the image and likeness of God, and that primarily is in our intellect, that is our mind, and in our hearts, our wills. So the more we form our intelligence, the better our intellect is, the more like God we will be. And I know that sounds dramatic, but that is the case. We have a God-given intelligence that we should use. Anything that we learn about the universe helps us to glorify God, our Creator. To understand the universe helps us to understand how He designed things. And so it contributes to our faith and our understanding of our relationship with God. But speaking about some things in particular, we all know, because these are the things that are most pushed, the maths and the sciences contribute to our understanding of how reality functions, helps us get some certain jobs require a good understanding of math and science. But if you think about it, it makes sense. Because everything in the universe involves numbers. If nothing else, because everything can be counted. It's not just for bank accounts, right? And physics, chemistry, biology, all this helps us to understand how the universe functions. Even if we don't know it academically, we at least can understand how God put things in order. And so that is also helpful. But in particular, I want to emphasize one subject, and that is the subject of language. I've said this to a number of the students who have asked me, but we all need to review this. Language is the blueprint of reality. Reality is reflected in language, in words and the relationship between the words. Grammar is a lot like engine maintenance. Grammar allows you to take it apart, maintain it, put it back together again, and know how it functions very well. It's being a mechanic. But it also is how we communicate ideas and our very selves. Relationships are all founded on, maintained, or destroyed by language. So it's very important that we consider that. Ahora, ¿por qué es necesario estudiar? Estamos hechos a imagen y semejanza de Dios, que sabemos, y en particular ese significa mente y corazón, como pensamos y como elegimos y amamos. Pues cuanto más usamos nuestra mente, más nos parecemos a Dios. También porque es el Creador, lo más que estudiamos, lo más que entendemos la creación y lo más que podemos glorificar a nuestro Creador. Hay muchos beneficios prácticos, obviamente, de entender el universo, cómo funciona, etc. Pero hablamos de algunas asignaturas en particular. Por ejemplo, matemáticas y las ciencias contribuyen a que seamos capaces de realizar muchos trabajos diferentes. Todo el universo implica números, no solo las cuentas bancarias, right? Y biología, química y física, etc. Todos son importantes en la mayoría de los campos de trabajo, aunque no sea tan académica. Pero en particular yo quiero enfatizar la lengua, porque es sumamente importante. La lengua no es más que el plano de la realidad, el plano de la realidad. Entender la gramática es entender cómo funcionan las cosas y su relación entre sí. Es como entender la mecánica de un motor y ser capaz de desmontarlo, montarlo y mantenerlo. La lengua es también la forma en que comunicamos ideas y a nosotros mismos. El lenguaje funda, mantiene o destruye las relaciones. And I finally just want to end with one quick comment on what about people who are not well formed? What about people that we know who are even persecutors of the faith, like St. Paul before his conversion? One of the biggest things that I have to deal with people on from the standpoint of heartbreak is how many people they know that are not practicing the faith or giving them resistance to practicing the faith, etc., etc. And all I can say is St. Paul is a great example of this, because regardless of whatever you understand, the fact is that St. Paul understood that before his conversion, he was an evil man persecuting Jesus Christ and his church. But he was converted, the fathers say, by the prayers and the martyrdom of St. Stephen, whose murder he approved of and witnessed. And so that teaches us something which I speak about all the time, because it's all that we can do. Yes, we can talk to people, but ultimately, the thing that affects others most is God's grace, and God has given us the two means to affect other people with his grace, principally through our prayers and our sacrifices. Even if you're not stoned to death like Stephen, those little deaths that we experience when we fast or give up particular kinds of foods or are uncomfortable, etc., etc., those kind of things are what help other people. So we should never despair of parents, spouses, children, friends, acquaintances, whatever. You do what you can in prayer and in sacrifice, and let God work in his time and in his way, trusting in him and not in ourselves. Y para terminar, ¿qué pasa con los niños que no están formados o que están mal formados? O otras personas que conocemos que son católicos o no, cristianos, son ateos, cualquier estado. Si realmente creemos en el infierno y la realidad que es posible ir al infierno, no diciendo quién va, pero es posible para todos, que necesitamos hacer algo si amamos a los demás. Y vemos el ejemplo excelente en la conversión de San Pablo. San Pablo proclama en muchas ocasiones exactamente lo malo que fue por lo que hizo en perseguir a la iglesia de Cristo. Y sin embargo, por la gracia de Dios, ahora se le conoce como el apóstol. En las escrituras de muchos de los santos, en la historia de la iglesia, su título es el apóstol. Los padres atribuyen la conversión de San Pablo a las oraciones de San Esteban y al ofrecimiento de sí mismo en sacrificio. San Pablo presenció y aprobó el asesinato de San Esteban y más tarde pidió misericordia para sus asesinos. Y este es el modelo para todos aquellos cuyos padres, cónyuges, hijos, amigos y conocidos no conocen a Cristo o eligen no seguirle o no seguirle bien. Debemos orar por aquellos que deseamos que se salvan y debemos ofrecer sacrificios regularmente por ellos. Y no debemos perder la esperanza. Debemos ser pacientes y aceptar humildemente la forma en que Dios obra y cuando Dios obra, confiando en Él y no en nosotros mismos.